Hello and welcome to sentence diagramming exercise number 1. This lesson will presume familiarity with the following terms: subject, predicate, predicate adjective, predicate nominative, direct object, indirect object, how to diagram prepositional phrases, and how to diagram possessive adjectives. If you aren't familiar with some or all of those terms, you may be able to figure out what they are and how they work as we go along, especially if you're using your sentence diagramming handout, but it will be extra challenging if you haven't, a little bit more challenging if you haven't done those yet. At this time, I'd like you to pause and complete the warm-up. In future lessons, please do the warm-up before you start the video playback. Pause now and do the warm-up. All right, in a writing class Mr. Day took in graduate school, he was taught that sentences must contain a topic and a comment, or a subject and predicate, or actor and action. Complete the table below. A predicate adjective follows a linking verb. It is an adjective. Fun fact, if you translate a sentence in English with a predicate adjective into Latin, that predicate adjective will be in the nominative case. Predicate nominatives follow linking verbs, but they are nouns. They too, when you translate a sentence into Latin, are in the nominative case. A direct object follows an action verb. Its part of speech is a noun. In a Latin sentence, the direct object is in the accusative case. So there are a couple patterns that are worth paying attention to here. When you're trying to figure out whether something is a predicate adjective, predicate nominative, or direct object, one thing to pay attention to is whether it's an action or linking verb. If it's an action verb, you know you've got a direct object. Another thing to pay attention to is the part of speech. If the part of speech is an adjective, you know you're looking at a predicate adjective. So thinking about that can help you identify predicate adjectives, predicate nominatives, and direct objects. Let's finish the warm-up. The questions that an adjective can answer: an adjective can answer the questions which one, what kind, and how many, or what kind, which one, and how many. Those are questions that an adjective can answer. The questions that adverbs answer are much shorter: how, when, and why. At this time, you should scroll down or look down your sheet. We're going to move on to the practice sentences, and I'm going to scroll and erase here, so bear with me for a moment. I will do the first sentence for you. The second sentence we'll do bit by bit, with me checking your work you and me checking your work as you go. The third sentence I'll ask you to try all by yourself, and then we'll check the whole thing. Here we go with the first sentence. The directions are to identify the parts of the sentence by labeling them above the appropriate words. Identify the part of speech of each word by labeling it below the word, and then diagram the sentence. In identifying the parts of sentence, the first thing to do that's really helpful is actually to identify all the prepositional phrases. So here they are in this sentence. Oscar Pistorius was found guilty of negligent homicide by a South African judge. Of negligent homicide and by a South African judge are both prepositional phrases. Prepositional phrases are generally not parts of sentence. So to think about the subject and predicate and so on, we can really just look right now at these words. Oscar Pistorius was found guilty. The subject of the sentence is Oscar Pistorius. The predicate is was found. And then we have this word guilty. Oscar Pistorius was found what? He was found guilty. Guilty answers the question what? That means it's going to be a predicate adjective, predicate nominative, or direct object. Was found is a linking verb. I hope you can tell that guilty is an adjective, so guilty is a predicate adjective. It's really helpful to do these steps in order, by the way. 1, identify the prepositional phrases. 2 and 3, identify the subject and the predicate. 4, asking yourself, what? And then step 5, after you figure out the what, you identify the indirect object. Is there a person or thing to whom or for whom this action is done? Not grammatically speaking, no. Okay, so Oscar, now we move on to the parts of speech. Oscar Pistorius is the subject, that's a noun. Was found is the predicate, it's a verb. Guilty is a predicate adjective. Of is a preposition. Negligent is an adjective. Homicide is a noun. By is a preposition. Is an article. South African is an adjective. Judge is a noun. Now it's time to diagram the sentence. We start by drawing a main line. Putting on the subject and the predicate, and a backward slanting diagonal line. That's what the main line with the predicate adjective looks like. Feel free to use your handout when you're doing this. This is rule of sentence diagramming number 1 right here. Oscar Pistorius was found guilty. All right, now we follow rule of sentence diagramming number 2 to put in the prepositional phrases. Nouns and verbs go on horizontal lines. Modifiers go on diagonal lines connected to the words that they modify. And we've got prepositional phrases here. So first, of negligent homicide, that describes the manner in which he is guilty. So that of negligent homicide describes guilty. So the prepositional phrase will have the preposition on a diagonal line connected to the word being modified, and then a horizontal line for the noun that's the object of the preposition. We call this a lazy L. Of homicide. What kind of homicide? Another modifier, an adjective describing the homicide, so it goes on a diagonal line. Negligent homicide. Okay, notice that we're actually almost done with the diagram. Oscar Pistorius was found guilty of negligent homicide by a South African judge. Now that describes how the finding happened. How he was found? Well, the person who actually did the finding was the South African judge. So by a South African judge is not going to describe guilty. It's not going to describe homicide. It is going to describe how the finding happened. So that gets connected to the predicate. By is the preposition, that's the modifier that goes on a diagonal line. Judge is the noun, it's the object of the preposition. It goes on a horizontal line. That creates the lazy L for the prepositional phrase. Is an article modifying judge. South African, I'm going to use abbreviations there. Goes on a diagonal line describing the judge too. And there's sentence diagramming number 1. Here's the second sentence. Oh, actually wait, let's cross this off just to be thorough. Here's the second sentence. True story. As a little boy, one of my college friends gave his baby brother half of his toys. The first thing I would like you to do is identify the prepositional phrases and put them in parentheses. Pause the recording and do that now. This sentence has 3 prepositional phrases. As a little boy, of my college friends, and of his toys. So now that we've got those prepositional phrases, we don't need to think about the words in the prepositional phrases much when it comes time to think about the parts of the sentence. So what we're left with is one gave his baby brother half. First 2 things, identify the subject and the predicate. Pause the video for a second if you need to. All right, the subject is one and the predicate is gave. I hope that you found that, and I hope you can see how helpful it is to identify and parenthesize the prepositional phrases first. Because that way you can see that one is the grammatical subject of the sentence, even though one is actually a friend of mine that we're talking about, but grammatically speaking, one is the subject of the sentence, and that gave is the predicate that's being used here, or being performed here. Okay. One gave what? Ask yourself that question. Figure out if there is a what. Figure out if that what is a predicate, adjective, predicate, nominative, or direct object. Pause the video for a second if you need to. Okay, one gave half. Gave is an action verb. Have is a direct object. Not toys, remember, that's in the prepositional phrase. And not brother, because the brother is receiving the toys or receiving the have. The brother is the person to whom or for whom the action is being done. Brother is actually the indirect object. That's who it's being given to. And have is what is given. That's the direct object. So we got the direct object. We have an indirect object. We're done with the parts of sentence. Now pause the video and hit yourself up with the parts of speech. Label them, please. All right, here are the parts of speech. As is a preposition. Is an article. Little is an adjective. Boy is a noun. One is a noun. Of is a preposition. My is an adjective. Tells us which friends we're talking about. My friends. It's also a possessive. College tells us what kind of friends we're talking about. College friends. That's an adjective. Friends is a noun. Gave is a verb. His is another adjective. Which brother are we talking about? His brother. It's also a possessive. Baby is an adjective describing what kind of brother we're talking about. Brother is a noun. Half is a noun. Of is a preposition. His is another adjective that's a possessive. Whose toys? His toys. Which toys? His toys. And toys is a noun. All right, here comes our diagram. The first thing to do is construct the main line. Look at the parts of the sentence. We've got an action verb, so we're going to have a vertical line there. Again, look on your handout at rule of sentence diagramming number 1. One is the subject. Gave is the predicate. Half is the direct object. The indirect object is brother. And it's not in the sentence, but it is part of the logic of the sentence. So we're going to put the word to on the diagonal for the prepositional phrase. That's the indirect object, but we're going to put it in parentheses because there's no word to actually in the sentence. One gave brother half. Okay. One gave brother half. Okay, let's start looking at modifiers. The first one is this prepositional phrase, as a little boy. That tells us when it happened. When is a question that is answered by an adverb. So where does this have to go? If it's answering the question when, it has to go under the predicate, because one, half, and brother are all nouns. An adverb, which we know that this prepositional phrase must be acting like because it answers an adverb question, when, has to go under the predicate. Okay, so diagram that. You might want to pause it. Well, if you pause it, you came back surprised because everything's blue. So we wake the computer back up, and we're back in business. We're back in business. Okay, so as is the prepositional phrase that goes on the is the preposition that goes on a diagonal line. Boy is a noun. And little are adjectives describing the boy. As a little boy. Okay, of my college friends is the next one. Pause the video for a second and do that. All right, of my college friends describes one. So here's the preposition and its object. Of friends on the lazy L, preposition and noun. College describes friends. My describes friends. My is a possessive adjective, so it's special. It goes on a lazy L. Please, please, please get that into your head. The possessives go on lazy L's. Okay, his and baby are the next words to diagram. They both describe the brother. What kind of brother? A baby brother. Whose baby brother? His baby brother. His is a possessive. It needs its own lazy L. Remember, modifiers go on diagonal lines connected to the words that they modify. So his baby brother, we got half already of his toys. Diagram that, please. I just gave you a hint. Pause the video if you need to. All right, and I hope you caught the fact that his goes on a lazy L connected to toys. All right, here comes the last sentence. I would like you to, after I read it, I would like you to parenthesize the prepositional phrases. That's step 1. 2, identify the subject. 3, identify the predicate. 4, what? As in, identify the direct object, predicate adjective, or predicate nominative if there is one. And then 5, ask yourself if there's an indirect object. Those are the parts of sentence we're working with. Then label the parts of speech under the words, then diagram the sentence. Pause it, and then I'll go over it pretty rapid fire, because that'll be you checking your work, not at this point, not me doing it for you. Pause the video. All right, here we go, pretty quick. There's one prepositional phrase with stuffed teddy bear heads. I hope you read your footnote, so you can treat teddy bear as a single word. Shoes is the subject, seem to be is the predicate, high tops is a predicate nominative. Seems to be is a linking verb, so that tells you it's high tops won't be a direct object. So your predicate adjective or predicate nominative territory. High tops is a noun, and the high tops and shoes are the same thing, so you're definitely looking at a predicate nominative here. Sapphires and favorite are both adjectives, with sapphires being a possessive. Shoes is a noun, seem to be is a verb, high tops is a noun. With is a preposition, stuffed is an adjective, teddy bear is an adjective, heads is a noun. Stuffed and teddy bear both describe the heads. And here's the diagram. Here's the main line. Shoes seem to be high tops with a diagonal line right there, separating the predicate from the predicate nominative. Rule of sentence diagramming number 1. Sapphires goes on a lazy L because it's a possessive. Favorite goes on a diagonal line. They're both connected to shoes because they're both adjectives describing shoes. And then with stuffed teddy bear heads, it goes on a lazy L with stuffed and teddy bear connected to heads. They describe heads. And with connected to high tops because with stuffed teddy bear heads, the whole prepositional phrase describes the high tops. Tells us what kind of high tops they are. All right. That's sentence diagramming exercise number 1, or the practice side of it, or the lesson side of it. What I would like you to do is to remember when you do sentence diagramming exercise number 2 to start to do and complete the warm-up before you start playing the video. That will save us all some time. Thank you.